Hey friends, welcome back to the Journey to the Cross as we continue journeying through John's Gospel, looking as from the view of a disciple living with Jesus, watching his ministry, recording it for us so that we also might believe in him. I welcome you to this session as we look at John chapters 7, 8, and 9 tonight. A reminder that all of those are available in your reading guide. Hopefully you're continuing on with that. And in the Journey to the Cross, there's that opportunity to read and to pray each day. And then also in our United in Prayer section at the back, there's an opportunity each week to lean into prayer themes that connect with our sermon series, as well as praying for our congregation, for our leaders, and also inviting God to do a great work in us in this season leading to Good Friday and Easter. So in this session, we're going to be looking at John 7, 8, and 9. We're going to be talking about a couple of things. We're going to be looking at two of the miracles that Jesus performed, Miracle 4 and Miracle 5. And we're going to start getting into the I am statements, where Jesus makes a statement about himself. So first of all, we have the feeding of the 5,012 that we're going to talk about that shows up in John chapter 6. In John chapter 6, we see that Jesus and the disciples are in the region of Galilee. And a great multitude is there listening to him speak. But it comes time for them to be fed. And the disciples are saying, Jesus, you need to send the people away. We don't have enough to feed them. And Jesus said, well, what do you have? Well, this young boy here has offered his lunch. He's got the 5 loaves, barley loaves, and 2 fish. And interesting, because barley is usually harvested around the time of Passover, so John always likes to bring those things in. But then Jesus does something interesting. He takes the loaves, he takes the fish, and he blesses them. Now, before he blesses them, he has the people sit down on the grass in groups. Sitting down on the grass indicates that he's about to do something like a shepherd would do for sheep. He has the sheep sit down in groups on the grass, exactly the way that a shepherd would do when he's preparing to feed his sheep. Jesus takes the elements, he takes the bread, he takes the fish, blesses them, and instead of handing them directly to the people, he hands them to the disciples. He said, now, you guys, go feed them. Here's the interesting thing. There's at least 5,000 people there, maybe quite a few more. But the 12 disciples were saying, hey, Jesus, send the crowds away, and then maybe you can give something to eat for us. They had to have been wondering, what are we going to eat? Because if you've only got a couple of fish, a couple of barley loaves, that's not enough for 12 men to eat. So Jesus hands it to the disciples who feed the people. And then afterward, I want you to pay attention to how many baskets full of leftovers those 12 disciples pick up. And figure out, how did Jesus feed 5,012? There seems to be a lesson there that Jesus is teaching the disciples. When you trust God and you take care of others, God will also take care of you. He's teaching something about ministry, about service, about seeing the needs of others, and in faith reaching out to serve them as well. May we also have the same heart in this season leading to Easter and looking for opportunities to serve, looking for opportunities to minister to others, knowing that God will care for us as well. Now, the feeding of the 5,012 ties in with a statement later in John 6 that Jesus is going to bring when he says, I am the bread of life. And in this statement of I am, Jesus references it back to Moses. Remember that when Moses is leading the people of Israel out of Egypt before they entered the promised land, God is providing bread, manna. Each day, God is giving a supply of manna for them to gather up for that day and to take care of them and sustain them. They're gathering that manna that has come down out of heaven. And in fact, there was an understanding among the Jewish people that it was through Moses that was being provided. And in the Torah, in the Jewish scriptures, it says that another prophet like Moses is going to arise. And like Moses, he will be one that provides manna for the people. There was a very clear tie-in of Moses' leadership and the provision of manna. But Jesus, as you're going to read about in your group in John 6, says that was not just manna that Moses was providing, but God was providing it, and he ties himself to that and says, I am the bread of life. Which calls us back to a few weeks ago when Pastor Tim was talking to us about the Lord's Prayer. What's the line in the Lord's Prayer? Give us this day our daily bread. It ties right back to the daily manna that God provided. So Jesus teaches his disciples how to pray for bread each day, and then makes the statement, I am the bread of life. And just like the manna in the wilderness, I will provide for you. Now, we also want to look at miracle number 5 that's dropped right in the middle of John chapter 6. So as you read about that in your reading, you saw that this was the 5th miracle that Jesus had done. In this case, the disciples are in a boat in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, and a storm has come up. And Jesus walks to them on the water, and the storm is stilled. Now, John's Jewish readers would have immediately recognized something in that. In the Jewish tradition, they thought about the waters, especially waters that were chaotic and stormy and dangerous. It brought them right back to remembering the chaos of the water at creation. In Genesis chapter 1, it says the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters that were chaotic and without form. So it ties back to these ancient forces of chaos that God is bringing under control. But it was God who calmed the waters and began the process of creation in Genesis 1. But they also would have been aware that in the land of Canaan, in the promised land, there were 2 very powerful Canaanite gods. Yam was the god who controlled the deep water. Baal was the god who brought storms. You may be familiar with these if you've read in the Old Testament about Yam, and Baal especially, the god who brought storms and rain. When Jesus is walking across the water, he is demonstrating himself to be more powerful than Yam and more powerful than Baal, in that he is able to calm the storm just by saying the word. John's Greek readers would have been very well aware of this as well, because in their tradition, Poseidon was the one who controlled the waters, and Zeus was the one who controlled the heavens. He's the one who brought storms and lightning and rain and all of these things. So Jesus is showing in this one miracle that he is more powerful than the Canaanite gods of Yam and Baal. He's more powerful than the Greek gods of Poseidon and Zeus. And he ties it back to, this is him who is as powerful as the God of creation in Genesis 1. Remember how John started his gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This same Jesus, the Word of God, is able to calm the chaotic waters just like God did in the creation act in Genesis chapter 1. There's a lot here, so I want you to get to your reading in John. You're going to see about these things in John chapter 6. In your reading, continue reading forward as we journey to the cross in this Easter season, allowing God to speak to us through John's gospel in beautiful new ways. God be with you in your group tonight.